Courtney Swan. I have a Master's of Science in Nutrition, and I host the Real Foodology podcast, and thank you so much for listening to us today. Our food is being tainted by dangerous chemicals, and it's making us sick. In 2009, I started to get debilitating stomach aches. I bounced around between specialists with no clarity for 2 years until 2011, when I was diagnosed with a gluten intolerance. I was also told to avoid corn and soy, which are common food sensitivities amongst my generation. Unfortunately, my story is not unique. Clueless to how this was connected to our food system, I started to do some digging. Why are chemical companies feeding seed sold by a chemical corporation that was responsible for creating Agent Orange in the Vietnam War? Why are chemical companies feeding America? Corn, soy, and wheat are not only the most common allergens, but are among the most heavily pesticide-sprayed crops today. In 1974, the U.S. started spraying our crops with an herbicide called glyphosate. And in the early 1990s, we began to see the release of genetically modified foods into our food supply. It all seems to begin with a chemical company by the name IG Farben, the later parent company of Bayer. Farben provided the chemicals used in Nazi nerve agents and gas chambers. Years later, a second chemical company, Monsanto, joined the war industry with the production of Agent Orange, a toxin used during the Vietnam War. When the wars ended, these companies needed a market for their chemicals. So they pivoted to killing bugs and pests on American farmlands. Monsanto began marketing glyphosate with the catchy name Roundup. Yes. So farmers started spraying these supposedly safe chemicals on our farmland. They solved the bug problem, but they also killed the crops. Monsanto offered a solution with the creation of genetically modified, otherwise known as GMO crops that resisted the glyphosate in the Roundup that they were spraying. These Roundup-ready crops allow farmers to spray entire fields with glyphosate to kill off pests without harming the plants. But our food is left covered in toxic chemical residue that doesn't wash, dry, or cook off. Not only is it sprayed to kill pests, but in the final stages of harvest, it is sprayed on the wheat to dry it out. Grains that go into bread and cereals that are in grocery stores and homes of Americans are heavily sprayed with these toxins. It's also being sprayed on oats, chickpeas, almonds, potatoes, and more. You can assume that if it's not organic, it is likely contaminated with glyphosate. In America, organic food by law cannot contain GMOs and glyphosate, and they are more expensive compared to conventionally grown options. Americans are being forced to pay more for food that isn't poisoned.